G'day, I'm Mark from Self Sufficient Me, and compost is one of the most important ingredients to successful gardening. One of the key principles to making good compost is moisture, but not this much. It's been raining so hard for so long that I'm not sure if I should repair my compost bays or build an ark. But what I will do is give you answers to 5 common composting questions to make compost for your garden at home. Let's get into it. Now, because of the weather, I've decided to get some help from somewhere that is less wet, like the UK. Yeah, I know, who would have ever thought that the UK would be drier than Australia? Anyway, I have a mate over there, Tony, you might know him from Simplified Gardening, and he happens to be a master of composting. Not only that, but he has also just released a book on composting called Composting Masterclass. And it is a composting masterpiece, and I highly recommend getting it. So being the composting guru, I decided to pick his Composting Brain. That's probably not the best phrase to use. Composting Brain. Anyway, you know what I mean. So the first question is, Tony, what in your opinion is the most simplest way to make compost?
We can make compost as simple or as hard as we want to. When you look at compost, let's take a look at it. All it is the breakdown of organic matter. So whether this is the plants and trees in your garden, or whether it's the bodies of animals and things like that, the simplest form of composting is to get all of these materials, whether that's grass clippings, wood chips, plants, and pile them up into a pile and walk away from it. And eventually, over time, that will break down into a nice dark humus that we call compost that smells really nice. This compost pile, you can already see it's already breaking down, and it's only a few weeks old. So it's really important that if we get a little bit of knowledge, we can then create good quality compost much faster, so we can use in our gardens, and that puts the nutrients back available so that life can continue.
Pile it up and walk away. That sounds like my type of composting. But I want to know, how long does it normally take to make compost from scratch?
Okay, so composting from scratch, how long does it break down? Well, that really depends on the ingredients that you use in your compost. Let's take grass clippings, for instance. If we were to just put a load of grass clippings and some shredded leaves into a pile, well, due to the nitrogen, that's going to break down much quicker. If we add lots of carbon-based product like wood chips or straw, things like this, well, that is going to take a little bit longer. The answer to your question is that it can take anything from a few weeks, depending on how much you're turning it and introducing air and keeping the elements working for you, to as much as a couple of years. But it depends on the ingredients, the amount of effort you want to put in, and the moisture content.
I'm a bit of a slow composting gardener, so I don't tend to take much notice of heat in the compost pile. But what if I have weed or grass seeds or diseased foliage? How hot should I get my compost pile up to destroy these pathogens or potential problems?
Now, if you want your compost to really break down and kill weed, seeds and pathogens, you need to get it above 130 degrees Fahrenheit. But what you will see is, once you get up to that 130 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit, that's the temperature you want to aim at, because you know you're killing the weed seeds. But then after that, it's going to start to cool back down into that mesophilic stage, and you want to then look at 3 things: either the food, the oxygen, or the moisture, because one of those is now lacking. And we know if it's a new pile, it's got plenty of food, and we can test the moisture to see how that feels. And if it's got good moisture, then we know it's lacking air, so then we need to turn the pile, and that will start raising the temperature back up in this sine wave. And if you want to speed the compost up, the more you turn, the more it goes through this cycle, and the quicker it will compost for you.
So Tony, I bury all kinds of things in my garden, such as fish frames, kitchen scraps, and even dead kangaroos. Am I evil? Or better still, what do you think about that? Hopefully you love it as much as I do.
Mark, I just love the fact that you bury animals in the garden for enriching the soil's nutritional value. And over the years, you know, I've followed you for a long time, and over the years I've seen you burying all sorts of things like kangaroos, snakes, eggs, poultry, and all sorts of stuff. And I think it's really, really good idea. What we're doing is what nature wants us to do. We're just speeding the process up. Instead of it breaking down and decaying on the soil surface, we're burying it and letting the microbes do that for us. And that's returning all those building blocks of life back into that soil so that the next sort of function in life can take all them building blocks and use them in the garden.
Last question. What are some of the benefits of composting, you know, besides knowing it's great for the garden, nutrients, etc.?
So the benefits of compost, well, they are vast, but I'll cover a few of them here. And firstly, you've only got to look at what's happening in the world today. You know, we've been through a couple of years of real bad stuff, and it's more important now than ever to be self-sufficient in the garden. By composting at home, you control the fact that you can get compost. The last couple of years we weren't even able to buy it for love nor money, but obviously that's becoming available again. And the other thing about it is the waste you're generating in the garden. As we start pulling out all of this waste, well, where's that going to go? We have to manage it, and this has dragged nutrients out of our garden. Well, we want to put them back. So composting at home, well, that puts all the nutrients that we've pulled out of that soil back into the soil. Another thing to consider is the CO2 as well, because if we were to bag all of this up and take it to our local recycle centre, or allow our councils to collect it in the big lorries they have, well, let's look at what happens there. They can use diesel to collect all of this stuff. It's then taken to their processing centre where it's ground up using a machine that runs on diesel. It's then laid out into big windrows, and they have a machine that rides over the top of it, turning it, which uses diesel. And then it's put into plastic packaging that uses a lot of resources in which to produce, and then it's shipped onto lorries and boats and things like that to go to warehouses which uses diesel, and then it ends up in the shops and you have to use diesel to go and buy it. That's a huge amount of CO2 to put compost back in your garden, whereas if we produce it at home, it comes out of the garden, goes into the compost, back into the garden. There's no CO2, so that's a massive benefit. The other thing again is cost. Everything in the world is rising at the moment, and that includes compost. Now here it's going anything up to £8 or £9 for a bag of 50 litres of compost, which wouldn't even touch my garden, and I'm sure where you're at it's getting more expensive as well. And by producing at home you save money. And the other thing is you're in charge of the quality of the compost. You know exactly what goes in it. As I said earlier on, with the council depots making compost, I'm finding things like plastic bags, knives and forks and all sorts of other stuff where they couldn't be bothered to remove them, and they've just ground it up into the compost. Well, that's not good for your soils either. And at home you get to choose what ingredients you put in it. We are not adding things that have had a broadleaf systemic pesticide sprayed all over them. You know exactly how you've gardened, and you know exactly what's been put into your compost. So there's loads of reasons, and there are a multitude more, which I do cover in my book.
Bonus question. Now Tony, this might not be one of the most common questions you get, but it could be if you've read Tony's book, Composting Masterclass, and that is, what is your favourite section of your book? And don't say you just can't pick a single section.
So Mark, you've asked me which is my most favourite section of the book, and to be honest with you, I can't just pick a single section, but I have two really favourite bits of this book and that I really enjoyed writing. That's chapter 3, which is all about soil microbiology, and chapter 6, which is about aerobic composting. Now, the first part of this, like I said, It makes you understand everything that's happening within your compost. Understanding how compost works, the fundamentals behind it, what's happening that you can't see, will allow you to make decisions on stuff that you have control over, and it'll allow you to problem solve. And I think that's really important. And getting things like the carbon to nitrogen ratio and the moisture levels right within that is one of the main things that people need to understand. So I delve into this, into a world of microbiology that most people wouldn't even think about, and those are my favorite sections of the book. I want to thank Mark for allowing me to come on his channel and speak with you guys about composting and answering some questions that Mark and you guys have had. What I will say is my book Composting Masterclass is out today, and it's available in 4 formats. So you've got hard formats or hard book, you've got a paperback, you have an audio book, and also an ebook. So you can get it in many formats, and it's available all over the place. You should be able to get it on Amazon, you should be able to go to your own bookstore and order it, and of course it'll be on all the ebook and audiobook platforms. So you should be able to get a copy anywhere, wherever you are. But the book is a culmination of a year's worth of work, and it delves into this fascinating subject of composting in such detail. You'll not only learn how to compost and all the varying different types of composting, but you'll understand the process behind composting and what compost actually does, how it goes through the stages of composting and what's happening in the microscopic world that you don't see. And Mark was very kind, and he was one of the people who actually did one of the proofreading for me on this book. So Mark, I'd like to thank you for that, because you've been fantastic with that.
No worries, mate. And I want to congratulate Tony on his comprehensive composting guide. Not just how to, but a deep dive into understanding what is and why. I can't show you a copy because I've only got the PDF at this stage, and it's raining, so why would I bring the book out here? But I guarantee you I'll be buying a copy myself. The other thing that I just wanted to say quickly was I also like the subtle humour you bring into the book. When you break it down, it's the humour, or should I say humus, that makes learning fun and even more interesting. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give it a masterclass, composting masterclass, thumbs up. And I'm going to get out of this rain as soon as I can. And share the video around. That'll help me and Tony out. And also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye for now. I'm going to get out of this rain and mud. Cheers. That was fun.